Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, what a turnout. Welcome to the Streaker Stand at the 2021 Dinghy Show with a Difference. I'm really pleased that you're all inside in this glorious weather. Thank you very much. And especially thank you to Tom Gillard, 8-time Streaker National Champion, who I'm very pleased is joining us from the South Coast. Can you hear me, Tom?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, there we go. So, Tom, thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate it. It's clear that you've managed to attract a bit of an audience, which is great. What I was hoping to do, if it's okay with you, is do a little bit of a life story around, very streaker oriented, but around your kind of history in the class. And then we've had quite a lot of questions about sailing streakers and how to set up and tune your streaker. So we'll get onto that as well. So don't intend to go on any more than an hour maximum. But let's get started. So Tom, tell us how you got into sailing. How did sailing start for you?
So sailing for me started at a very young age. I think around the age of 4 or 5. Crewing a mirror dinghy for my dad. Yeah, really young, up the front end, and yeah, through all the winters and the cold and everything. And then later on went on to graduates, more crewing. Yeah, and eventually I got bought a topper. So that was my introduction to helming, really.
Now, there you go. So I believe that might be you in an oppie. Your dad thought you'd be about 6 then.
I've actually seen that picture before, so it's quite bit embarrassing.
Yeah, but you definitely had quite a good time in the topper, right? What was the kind of highlight of your time in the topper?
So I think my biggest result in the topper class was winning the inland national championships at Grafton Water. It was against one of the biggest fleets ever in toppers, which was about 320 something from memory. Long time ago. Can't remember what year. I think it was about 2004.
I think it was there were four fleets or something I read. So you literally, there's so many toppers that they couldn't get them all on one start line, which you kind of get a sense of here. But you won that comfortably, right?
I think I won it with a race to spare.
Yeah,
it was quite light winds because I was so small for the topper at the time. Yeah, and it just benefited my weight, really. So
what were you, about 15, I guess, roughly?
Yeah.
So what kind of coaching were you getting in the topper? Was that club level, or were you kind of in some kind of squad, or how was that?
So initially when I started, just got training from my dad, and then I got invited in as a discretionary place into the national youth squad, which was the top level squad at the time. So
that would have been quite fundamental to getting some good coaching. And
yeah, and which was the coach was also Dave Cockrell. He did all the coaching for the topper national squad then.
Cool. So I suppose the big question is how come streakers? What got you into streakers?
Well, again, my dad just I think actually my granddad built one for me, or I used one of my granddad's boats to compete in one of the nationals. I think I can't remember what my first one was, about 2005.
I can tell you.
You probably can. I can't remember. Yeah, so it was a long time ago. I wasn't very big for the boat, and no expectations really. I'd sailed it a little bit before doing the nationals, obviously, but I was again way too small for the class, and
so your dad's for those who don't know, your dad's a streaker national champion himself. This is you and him at Filey, I believe, in 2000, according to my records. So yeah, and as you say, you went on your first streak of nationals. This was the one. Sounds like you can hardly remember.
No, I can't. It's so long ago.
Pennine in 2005.
2005. Okay.
You remember where you came?
Third, fourth. I'm not sure.
Second.
Oh, was it second? Okay.
Second in your first nationals. So tell us about these characters.
Yeah. Wow, I just can't get over my hair. Yeah, wow, really embarrassing. So yeah, I think Ian Jones won that year.
He did.
Yeah. He's the fourth in from the left. My dad next to me. You got Steve on the end.
Yeah, Steve Cockerell.
Yeah.
So that was the story of the next 5 years, really, was you, Ian, and Steve Cockerell, pretty much, for the nationals. That was your record in what I'm going to call your apprentice years, before you started really nailing it. So it's a distant memory, right?
Yeah, long time ago.
But Steve and Ian, no slouches in the streaker, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Even now, if any one of them jump back in, it'd be right at the front again.
Yeah, I think
no
so.
doubt about it.
But you mentioned there you're in a wooden boat built by your granddad, so that's impressive. Quite nice.
Yeah.
So what happened at Lancing? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I can't remember why I didn't turn up that year. I think I was. So we can go back one. What year was Lancing?
It was 2009. It's this picture, so it was well windy. You were there. You were fourth.
Or was I? Okay.
But
that was the one that I remember. Was that the one with noodle soup? So everybody said it was noodle soup because there was a big raft of weed that came across the course.
Yeah, everyone got caught up in the weed. That's what your dad said. And I think they only raced one day out of the two.
Yeah, so you had to keep pulling your foils up and down the whole time.
Yeah, and you couldn't. I saw some pictures of people trying to launch on the shore break, and it was pretty tough.
Yeah, the launching and recovery was really difficult, if I remember rightly, because it's straight up the shingle beach, straight up. So we had to have a full team just literally picking boats up and people out of the water. So, yeah, do you remember that?
So that brings us on to Stewartby 2010. Hopefully you remember that one.
Yeah, it was first one I've managed to win. It was a shifty lake, that one. It's quite light winds as well, and I was still small at the time for the streaker, so it kind of played to my advantages, really, and gained enough experience from the previous nationals to have learned a bit in the class and in the boat to go forward to finally win one.
I think this photo tells the story, really. From what I could see, you that was the you won every race, I think, didn't you? Cleaned up.
I don't know. I couldn't remember that, but yeah, okay.
Another embarrassing picture for you. But your first nationals win. You probably don't like wine even now, do you?
I like wine. Maybe not that one in particular, but
hopefully that's most of the embarrassment out of the way, at least until we get to the capsize in Weymouth. We'll come on to that later.
Yeah.
So here's the full Tom Gillard story. So once you won it in 2010, a slight slip up in. Well, perhaps you tell us about 2011, seeing as how that sort of the slight blemish in that record there.
Yeah, so 2011, I'd just come back from having done the Fireball Worlds in Sligo, and I I lost on equal points to the guys that won, Matt Burge and Richard Wagstaff. It was 16 points. I'll never forget 16 points. Ever, because he finished on 16 points as well, and he beat us on countback, having won the last race. And yeah, I remember sitting on the plane coming back because I had to get to the Streaker Nationals literally the next day. Yeah, and it was. And then I came second at the Streaker Nationals as well. So it's pretty heartbreaking. And yeah, just kind of spurred me on really to try and better myself and just get better really. But that was a pretty landmark year for me. Yeah. I think I remember Steve actually that year in 2011 having a bit of a match race with me, potentially as well. So that was probably one of my first that I'd had a real match race situation going on. So I learned quite a lot from Steve on that one. Also, my 4-stay came undone on race 1, which also didn't help. Yeah, sorry, Dad. Yeah,
that doesn't help, does it? When you just come off a plane and everything else. But that, as you say, that spurred you on, and your record since then has been pretty impressive. Are there any that stand out, before the most recent ones, that kind of stand out as particularly good ones?
So I think Rutland was one of my favourite. Reason being, I just thought I sailed it really well.
This one's Rutland.
Yeah, that one's Rutland. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I just thought I didn't really put a foot wrong on that event, as far as I could tell anyway. Someone might point out some mistakes, but no, I just thought that was a really cracking event. Great wind, great organisation. Yeah, it was an awesome one that year.
You mentioned 2013 to me as well, which was Northampton.
Yeah.
And looks like you're getting the better of the match race against Mr. Cockerell.
Yeah, so I kind of had a bit of a role reversal on that one, and also I wasn't very big as well at that stage as well. So and with it being windy at that event, I thought I said particularly good. Just keeping Steve behind me really, especially in the last race. In fact, the last couple, I think we match raced for a good couple races. Well, not match race, but I mean just keeping him behind me basically. It's a bit of a focused set of results really. So
I like this photo as well, because actually, I mean, obviously for researching this, I'm always looking at pictures, finding good ones, but it so often, and actually when I'm out sailing, so often I see you hiking like that and everyone else hiking like everyone else in these pictures. You are, a bit of a ninja when it comes to hiking. So tell us about your fitness. How do you work out? What's your fitness regime?
So I mean, at the moment during lockdown, obviously no one can really do much sailing at all. So to keep fit, I have used these things called kettlebells. So they're like a weight that's it's shape of a kettle basically, and they're quite heavy, and you basically just throw it about and it gets you fit. So really simple bit of kit, but I mean, obviously, as you can't go to a gym, you can't go sailing or wherever else, I just find them really useful for total body fitness. So
in normal times, do you use the gym a lot, or you just kind of rely on your sailing to keep fit?
No, I've always used kettlebells, and yeah, it's just sailing as much as possible really. A lot of solo sailing, so I have to hike even harder for a solo because it's I'm even more out of my depth in terms of weight and size. So
yeah, you're well light for a solo.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, I'll just pull this photo as well. That was Grapham, which was that was a pretty breezy one.
Wow, some mass bend on there.
Cool. Okay, so that brings us on to Weymouth. What happened?
I mean, Martin nailed it basically. So yeah, he just absolutely stormed away really. So Day one, I think it was pretty breezy, sort of force 3 to 4, I'd say. So pretty much all fully hiked all the way around the course. Pulling plenty of Cunningham on. I think it was race 2. I pulled a little bit too much Cunningham on, and I broke the main halyard, causing the main to fall down. In fact, I think it was the actual bobble, the knot slip through the bobble at the top of the sail, and that's so I ended up having to lash the sail to the top of the mast by swimming to the top and tying it on. I was leading the race at the time. Yeah, I had to just tie it back up and get back on with it. Managed to get back just behind Martin at the end of the race, and I also slightly broke my centerboard as well, so it was wobbling about inside the case.
Seriously impressive.
After writing it from that picture there,
yeah,
and to board around the side of the boat, which wasn't too good. My dad was not impressed.
I think that's seriously impressive that you get your main's falling down, you swim to the top of the mast, get a bit of lashing. We're all told to carry a bit of line in our buoyancy aids, but I don't know if many of us do.
Yeah.
You had the right bit of line, tied it off, got yourself upright, and still came second. I had a conversation with one of the rescue teams at that event, and I think they probably came over to see if you needed any help. And,
yeah, I was screaming, "Don't touch me," because obviously
exactly.
outside assistance. Then, so I was pretty adamant not to go anywhere near me.
You didn't want you definitely didn't want outside assistance at that point.
No, absolutely not.
Cool.
Yeah, so managed to get it back up right and got back to second. I was praying for another lap, to be honest. I think I might have got back there if we might have had another lap, but no, not to be.
So yeah, that was day one, and then day 2, which after a lay day, because it was blowing a bit of a hoolie, wasn't it? Well, by my
yeah, I remember we still went out. Even me and a guy called Lawrence Creaser, we both went out. With the only 2 to go out on that day, so it was a good blast out. It's nice and breezy.
You just went out for a blast.
Absolutely, you don't get many days like that on big seas in streakers. That's for sure. So it's well worth going out.
I think you kind of talked to me about the comparison between the streaker and the solo in that kind of wind, out there. The streaker's just so light. It's great, right?
Well, I think it's got no kind of upper speed limit, if you know what I mean. Most boats kind of top out at so when they're still controllable, but they don't kind of go any faster because of friction and a lot of other things. Whereas I think streakers just keep going and going depending on how much wind there is, which is phenomenal, really. I mean, I've overtaken top level phantom sailors in a streaker just depending on how windy it is. I mean, the windier it is, the faster you go. And other boats have a lot of limitations to not be able to top out. So yeah, it's just awesome downwind.
Yeah, good fun, really good fun. Okay, well that's that was the kind of the tour of that was my attempt at a Piers Morgan life story. I'm no Piers Morgan, but thanks for doing that. That was really good. Let's talk a little bit more about sort of setting up your streaker, tuning, how to sail fast, Tom Gillard style. So I've put a few pictures together. They're not. I don't think the pictures tell a great deal necessarily, but they're just to sort of prompt us for us to talk about. So I thought we'd sort of start with upwind. Talk us through the kind of range of controls that you're using, how much Cunningham, outhaul, kicker, those kinds of things in sort of light, medium, heavy. Give us a sort of the sort of bottom-up guide, if you like, as to the kind of the essentials. That would be great, and I'll chip in with any questions.
Okay, so I think we'll start with the light wind one on the left. I think I've got a reasonable amount of outhaul on there. Reason being is just so that the wind can still get around the sail without falling off of it. I don't have too much kicker. I use more mainsheet tension than kicker, really, in this amount of wind, just to just kind of bend the mast and try and open the leech at the top. I haven't got too much traveller on as well. So want to try and keep it relatively out to the side, or slightly in from the quarter. Weight sat fairly far forward, so like on the thwart, as you can see. Just keep the transom out a little bit, maximize waterline length.
Is the dagger board vertical at this point, or do you still have it raked a bit? Well, I mean, I don't necessarily mean in the picture, but what would you normally do in a light wind?
So really, the handle wants to be flat on the top of the board against the case in that amount of wind. I wouldn't bother raking forwards. I mean, if you starting to hike, I would start raking it back. Some boats might not have the option. It might just float forwards and you're kind of stuck with it. But maybe get a retaining device or some sort of friction device inside the centerboard case to stop it from doing that.
So, but once you're hiking, you're starting to rake it, are you? So it's vertical if you're not hiking, and then starting to rake if you can.
Yeah. So the head of the board wants to go forward, so the tip under the water is effectively backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, pivoting around its back corner, pivoting against the bottom of the back of the case, effectively, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you should have a bit of rubber if you've got if it's set up right. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, as you say, he's the traveller. So yeah, you mentioned the outhaul there. So is there a situation where you would, even beating, that you'd ease the outhaul a bit?
Yeah, when you powered up in a bit more breeze, I would definitely. As you can see in the right-hand picture, it's got quite a big bag there, and I basically use the outhaul as a kind of chop control. So depending on waves, how much chop there is how kind of big I make the sail. If it was dead flat water and still pretty windy, I would have it almost flat again.
So for the lake sailors, they may not be wanting to kind of ease it to get the power, but in this kind of chop at Weymouth, you definitely
that was a lot more than that.
A bit of drive.
Yeah, so that's probably the fullest I've ever had my main, really, just to get through the chop on that, which was working pretty well actually. So.
And Cunningham in the light stuff, is the Cunningham completely off?
I don't touch the Cunningham at all when it's light. I use the Cunningham as a all on or all off control. I wouldn't even bother taking creases out. Basically, if you're starting to spill wind, I would start pulling Cunningham on then, and there's only a very, very narrow wind range where you'd want a little bit of Cunningham on. I go from like none to as hard as you can physically pull quite quickly.
Is that basically as soon as you're overpowered, as soon as you can't keep the boat upright, start piling the Cunningham on?
Yeah.
So if you've reached the limit of how much hiking you can do to keep it flat, and you're starting to have to spill any wind, then
max Cunningham,
max Cunningham, and hopefully you then won't have to spill wind for a little bit more wind strength.
And also the trick is to recognize when you're not fully hiking and you've still got max Cunningham on, you need to be letting it off pretty quickly, like say in the lulls. Absolutely.
Yeah, and as soon as you turn off wind, of course, which we'll come to. Okay, cool. If people have got questions, they can put them in the chat. We won't try and do them live now, but we'll try and get to some at the end in the Zoom chat. So yeah, okay, I think that really covers upwind very well. And actually, I'm trying to refer to questions that I've had from the audience in advance, and we answered Simon's question there, who was asking about the centerboard. He's new to streakers, so thank you for that. Well, we probably come on to centerboard on other points of sailing, but let's see. So you mentioned the traveller, and this is something, because I have a solo style traveller on my streaker, so I thought it'd be quite interesting to just help us understand how and when you kind of tweak that. Is yours adjustable on your boat?
Yeah.
From the cockpit, adjustable from the sailing position?
No, I set it up pre-start, so I do a quick check, like a first beat just before the start of the race. Go out nice and early, and just check that the traveller is in a reasonably decent position before you start.
And what are you looking for? What's the theory around the top picture versus the bottom picture in terms of how much traveller to use? and
So,
what would you be using?
Okay, so really you want to try and keep your main mostly to the quarter. But so effectively it's only then affecting leech, the leech profile. So you're not really moving the boom any further out or in. It's just in the same place, but you're pulling more down effectively on the leech.
So you're trying to get it set up such that no matter how much sheet tension you've got, it stays in roughly the same, just over the quarter. I would say the bottom picture he's probably in from the quarter a bit, is he almost?
Yeah,
because he's got a very small, he's got quite a tight traveller there.
Probably got quite a rounded leech with he's probably spilling quite a bit of air, the lower picture.
Right.
I bet if you looked up at his leech, it'd be really open.
Whereas the other picture, he's almost block to block, so he would potentially have quite a lot of leech tension, or at least he'd be able to get leech tension.
I think with the lower picture, I would probably almost ease the traveller off a bit and then pull more main sheet tension on, just to hold the leech a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the cut of his sail as well. I don't know. I can't really tell from the picture, but yeah.
Yeah, I must admit it's a bit of a black art to me. I still haven't quite got it, what to do with that. Luckily, I've got a traveller, so.
Yeah, there's kind of two paths. I think kind of half the fleet have it very pinned down like a laser style.
Yeah, almost like the bottom picture.
Yeah, and then the other half of the fleet have them quite loose. So starting off loose in light winds, so the blocks kind of almost come block to block, and then you start pulling down from there.
Is it almost the case of you ideally want it block to block at the point when you've got maximum leech tension, and then obviously if you ease, it's then not block to block. You don't want it so loose that you can't get it in.
I've never really touched block to block before.
Right. Okay. So it's not that loose.
No.
Okay.
No, it's quite a difficult subject, that one.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't think there's really a right and wrong behind it. I think it's just personal preference. It's also dependent on what your forestay tension is and what you're trying to do with the mast. I think it's whether you want to try and bend the top. So if you're saying you want to bend the top of the mast, you'd have probably quite a tight forestay, and then pull on quite a lot of main sheet tension or kicker or main sheet tension actually to bend the top of the mast and open the leech at the sail at the top. So acting like almost another Cunningham, but it depends which way you want to do it, and whether you want a bent top part of the mast, or the bottom part.
Okay, I'm going to move on. You've beaten me. What's the so I know you don't have a streaker with a traveller, but you sail a solo with a traveller. So what would you think would be how would you set up a streaker if you did have a traveller, do you reckon? Is it, if you've read the kind of guides for solos, would that effectively be the way to go? Is that kind of, would you think there'd be any difference?
Yeah, similar. I think it depends on how you rig it, and I'm not sure because the fort's quite far forward. I think it makes it a bit of an issue with where it's sheeted to. So I've never really looked at a streaker with a traveller, so it's hard for me to gauge. But I mean, obviously, I think where the outboard end of your boom is coming to the quarter, I think is the key behind it all.
Yeah, so it's the same principle that you're aiming for, which is that when you're sheeted in, you've got the boom just on that quarter position.
Yeah,
and that you're able to control leech tension with the sheet rather than the kicker in those kind of medium wind strengths.
Yeah,
where you're not using kicker sheeting, as some people call it, where you're not basically depowering with kicker, at which point the traveller becomes almost irrelevant, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Once you've got more kicker on than a certain amount. Okay, so let's move on to reaching. I like this picture on the left. That's kind of the typical how Tom sees the rest of the fleet, and how we see him. Yeah, just a couple of reaching pictures. One's much older. But yeah, what's the kind of, how are you kind of powering up, or as and when it gets too strong, depowering in the reaching conditions?
I think definitely start with a bit of out all off. It depends on how much wind there is again. If you're borderlining on planing, which is pretty early in a streaker, as you all know. So yeah, pretty early with the out all off, just to make the base of the sail nice and deep, power up. Cunningham off, a little bit of kicker, just don't spill too much. It depends on how close hauled you are, whether it's a broader or a tighter reach. You'd be just looking for the leech spilling. Wouldn't bother. I mean, the centerboard is, I wouldn't move too much on the centerboard. It doesn't take much.
Leave it most of the way down for reaching. Is that what you're saying?
I don't tend to move the centerboard up that much. Probably gauge it probably about no more than like 12 inches or something. I'm trying to remember.
So you're not kind of consciously trying to minimize centerboard to the point, as long as you've got a bit of grip, you're more inclined to leave it down to.
Yeah, I'd definitely test for where the biting point is. So I just kind of gauge, obviously holding the tiller, I'd gauge how much. So I start pulling it up, and then if it starts slipping, because you'll suddenly get the tiller kind of twitching, and power will be all over the place. So you just want to have it down so you get biting point again. I think that's pretty much the sweet spot. And just keep the boat level, really, as well.
Well, I've found a couple of reasonable pictures on that front.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, is there a point where you're kind of trying to depower in reaches, or as you say, are you just going for maximum speed at this point?
I mean, if you are starting to spill wind, and again pull the Cunningham on. If you're flapping the sail, if the sail's flapping, the Cunningham should be max on. Simple as that, regardless of what course you're heading.
Yeah.
Upwind, reaching, whatever, it should be max on if you're flapping, ever, any direction. So
cool.
Because a flat sail is faster than a flapping sail, because if the sail's doing that, you've got no drag going over it, and you've got no power going over it. The wind's not disturbed going across the sail. Yeah. So yeah, Cunningham on, definitely. Just watch the front of your the luff of the sail, and if it's tall moving, you should have the Cunningham on, and I mean like not just a little bit on. It should be so hard that your hands really hurt pulling it on.
Enough to break the halyard.
Yeah, enough to break the halyard. Yeah. Cheers.
So let's do the light stuff downwind. Obviously not you on this occasion, but I've just some pictures nicely heeled to windward, maybe too much. Yeah, what's the theory? What are we aiming for here?
Yeah, way nice and far forward. I like seeing a little bit of windward heel on the dead down stuff. That's pretty nice.
Is there a way to judge how much heel, do you reckon?
The gunnel. Don't touch the gunnel in the water, really, if you can help it.
Okay, that slows you down.
Yeah.
Does the boat steer itself a fair bit on the amount of heel as well? So can you kind of get the helm neutral by getting the windward heel right?
I think you can, but you have to. Now you still have to push ever so slightly, but it depends on how raked your rudder is and some other bits. I think it is. I personally think it's a little bit quicker. I mean, if it's really windy, I wouldn't do it. I would just be dead flat, because your foils will be going through the water a lot faster than the benefit of you heeling to windward. But in that photo and around them with those conditions, I would say windward heel is better than flat, I think.
Okay, but not to the point where you're trying to get the helm neutral, just more. So
if you're starting to plane or you're starting to sail angles downwind.
Yeah, or you a bit more windy.
Yeah, I would say flat, like in that picture. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, that brings us on to the questions that we've got. So we're more or less on time, I think. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a little while and ask one or two questions. So Alan has asked, how have streaker sales developed over the last 10 years?
Over the last 10 years, I would say not a great deal, because I think within the rules, they're kind of limited. Even though there's been rule changes, I think it's still, you can still have a sale that's 10 years old. I'd say they haven't moved on such great bounds that you can't be not competitive with a sale that's 10 years old if it was new, obviously. In rule terms, there's nothing really beneficial about having one now than then.
So if you've got a 10-year-old sail in the loft that hasn't been used, it's probably, as long as the mice haven't had it,
potentially could be okay.
Should be okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And what about, so Tim has asked, with the new tapered masts being approved, do you think there's going to be any changes to the cut of the sail?
So, well, I would be looking towards putting a luff curve change in the head of the sail, potentially. I need to wait. I need to see it for myself, though, really, just to check.
Have you had a chance to try a tapered mast yet? Because your dad's had one on the boat.
I have tried a tapered mast just once. It was so windy that I couldn't really tell.
Right.
On anything really. So.
Right.
But I think I think it would need a slight alteration, certainly in the top third, just to potentially suit the rig. But I'll see how it looks.
Sure. Okay, that'll be interesting to hear what you think when you get a chance to have a proper look. Roberto says, what's the most important thing you can do before each race?
Most important thing. Probably strop on the going back to the strop again, the main sheet strop, getting the length correct for where it sits at the aft quarter. Because if it's in the wrong place, or you have to have too much leech tension, it's literally like a handbrake. So,
sure.
I'm sure it's right.
Interesting. I've got a kind of extension to that question, which is the kind of, so this is you at Carsington, I think, about to nail the pin end. But I was going to ask you a slightly longer question, which is, talk us through your day up to this. Let's say this is, it may not be, but let's say this is the first race of the day. Talk us through your day. What do you do for breakfast, through to checking out the first beat. Yeah, what's the Tom Gillard regime turning up to the first race of the Nationals?
Well, I don't really like to eat during the day, so I usually have a really big breakfast, and it's usually probably quite a bad breakfast, really.
Naughty breakfast? Yeah,
naughty breakfast, like full English if possible, and then that'll do me for the day, really. I'm all set.
Do you like to get out on the course early?
Eat during the day, even between races, really. I just don't like eating, so. Yeah, get down nice and early. Maybe go early out on the water. Just test everything out. Get used to the boat again. Usually it's big gaps between me sailing one and sailing again. So.
Do you like to kind of do the whole of the first beat if you can, have a kind of decent look at the course?
I mean, course is important. Yeah. I probably wouldn't do the whole beat. Depends on the venue. If there's like a venue that's got like a definite right or a left gain, then really you want to be trying doing split tacks with somebody. So set off the same time. Obviously, one of you go one way, one go the other way, and then and time, like say 2 minutes, and then tack back and come back in. That's your best way to sail, and that's on big open piece of water like Weymouth and stuff and places like that. But on most smaller places, I probably wouldn't bother with anything like that. Just if I can see a few shifts, it's probably all right. So.
And I have to ask you this on this event in particular, because I'm 1977 on the left-hand end and you're on the right-hand end. So as we look at it, so what's your technique for deciding which end of the line? I know everyone's got their favorite way, but how do you typically decide which end of the line to go?
Well, I think keeping my nose clean is one thing that I like to try and do, even if it's starboard end bias, which I think this particular start was. So you're in the right place, really. Probably, but I just want to be just nowhere near people, just because it gives me options then. Because I think this was Carsington, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to be able to tack when I want to tack and such, and also not be over the line. So I just want a real risk-free start, and Port gave me that, really.
Cool. Okay. So my able assistant here has possibly got some other questions that have come in from the audience. Yeah, I can put it up on my screen. Stand by while I try and do that. Okay, so from Kieran, how important is forestay tension? You talked about that, and how do you decide on the setting for the forestay tension?
So I would look at the Class Association website for tuning guides. They'll give you a rough base for a decent kind of base setting, and then I would just experiment with putting either a little bit more on and a little bit less, and then trying it each time. So if you want to bend the top of your mast, you put more forestay tension on, and then equally put more main sheet tension on, and then you bend the top of the rig, which opens the leach. Depends how full your sail is. So if you've got really full sail, you probably want to try and twist the main open at the top a little bit more, or vice versa. If you've got a pretty flat sail, then I probably wouldn't try and open it. So just have a nice straight rig, and use like the base settings or even less tension. So.
Okay, check out the website, people.
Yeah, for the numbers.
Tuning guide. Yeah, the numbers are on the website, aren't they? There's a measurement to the there's a measurement from the top of the mast to the transom in all the tuning guides, and how to set the boat up right so you're measuring it correctly. So I agree, point people in that direction. So Lee is asking, so he doesn't have a traveller system at all on, it's just a centre main sheet. So I guess that means it's literally to the thwart only on the centre. So would that be detrimental to performance? He's asking.
Simple centre main sheet. Okay. If it's just pinned in the centre, I think you can still be successful with it. I think you just have to play your kicker really, really carefully, and obviously watch the back of your boom in relation to where the corner of the transom is.
Because you could oversheet it if you're not careful.
You definitely oversheet it. So to control the leach, you're going to have to play the kicker more. But unfortunately, that's going to bend your mast a lot more in a different way than the main sheet would normally. So
yeah, probably not a massive disadvantage, but definitely be wary about if you oversheet and stall the boat, wouldn't you? If you oversheet, and then
you just have to maybe put like kind of a mark on the main sheet or something that you know where you're not going to oversheet it to, or something like that. Maybe just calibrate your ropes so that, say, put like stitch a bit of whipping twine through your main sheet or something, so that you don't pull too much through, and obviously stop your boat if you go anywhere near the centre. You don't want to be sheeting near the centre of the boat.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, good idea. Okay, so we obviously went too fast over the centreboard rake. So Tim is saying, can we just go through that again? So when is the centreboard vertical? When do you rake it? And I guess we didn't really talk about off wind, but it would always be raked off wind, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Off wind, or it'll always be in the forward position. So you generally lift it up and then you go forwards.
Yeah. But upwind, when would you have it down? Would you rake it forward at all? And when would you rake it back?
So I would say off the start line, if I'm wanting to try and pinch someone out above me or hold my lane via pinching, I would have the board flat level. So the top of the little block on the so there's like a little block on the top like this, and it'll be flat against the case, so dead flat with the bow. And then I would do this off a start line, and then probably just then rock it forward so that the bottom is facing the transom. Once this is once I've got off the start line, and that's in anything hiking. I mean, if it was like no, if I'm not hiking, it would always be flat.
Always dead down. Okay, how we got it this time, Tim? So Mick is saying, have you ever used a wave sail?
No, I haven't actually. No, I just go out with the big one every time.
Just go out with the big one and put the Cunningham on.
Well, you got to train in every bit of wind you can, you know. Yeah, that's what the Cunningham's for, you know.
Exactly, the Cunningham is the wave sail.
The Cunningham is everything. It'll depower any more, much more than changing to the wave sail technically anyway. So it just depends how much you want to pull the Cunningham on. I mean, if you can't pull it, I mean, I'm pulling so much that the Cunningham eye, we have a Cunningham eye on our sail, and it touches the boom when I pull all of it on. So that might be a little bit of like mass bend and rope stretch potentially as well, but I mean, it shouldn't. It's Dyneema, but yeah, it's like all the block, the eyelet would go all the way to the boom. If I'm.
Do you know how much purchase you've got on your Cunningham?
Not enough.
Because I think I've upgraded mine from 6-to-1 to 8-to-1, and I think that probably based on an article by your dad in the Streaker newsletter. So I'm guessing that's probably what you've got.
I think he has put an extra purchase on, but I can probably pull enough on anyway, I would say. But usually in any single hander, you want to be, I'd probably sit on the floor of the boat before the start and pull with two hands and push and lever myself with my legs basically against the thwart, sit on the floor of the boat and pull on as physically much as I can, like all of it, everything.
Yeah.
So
then you want to let it off when you go downwind, right?
Sorry.
Then you want to let it off when you go downwind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then sit on the floor to pull it back on after you go around the Lewin Mark.
Well, it's not always possible, is it? You know.
I get the idea.
But yeah, just as much you have to pull it with all your might. There's if the seriously, if the main's flapping, your Cunningham should be absolutely Mach 10 on. It should be all of it on. The top of the sail should be just flapping about with how much Cunningham you're pulling on, just to get the power out.
Cool. So Duncan is asking about steering in waves, upwind and downwind. What's the secret?
Okay, so steering in waves is something that I never really used to do. I've kind of done more and more the more I've kind of progressed without kind of knowing it, if that makes sense. So effectively what you're trying to do is trying to get over the wave. So you want to be steering up, you push the helm away from you, which effectively pushes the bow upwards. So every time you encounter a wave, you want to be pushing away from you, and then equally once you get over the wave, you go back to recorrect the bow effectively. So you're not obviously head to wind. Yeah, and it's just a motion of doing that. So you see a wave, you push the tiller down, the bow comes up, and then you go over the wave, and then pull the tiller, and it goes back down again, and you just do a constant motion of that just to get over the waves. That kind of answers.
That's upwind, yeah, and I think the way I also think of that is because, of course, as you're going down a wind, you get down a wave, you're going faster, so the apparent wind is moving forward, and then as you go up the wave, you're going slower, so the apparent wind moves back. So that's kind of an extra reason to do it, as well as the motion of the wave, right?
Yeah, you have to hike more at the top of the wave because there's more wind up there.
Exactly, more wind at the top, and you're going slower, so the apparent wind is stronger. So yeah, exactly. And then downwind, kind of.
So downwind, you just want to be looking at the bow of your boat and probably go about 2 meters probably in front of where your bow is going. And if there's any, so obviously you don't want to be ploughing into the front of the next wave in front. You want to be looking for the gaps. So you start doing what I think most coaches call transitions, which is where you go from one wave to the next wave and trying to look for the best path through from that wave to the next wave. And generally you have to ride the wave. Once you've got on the wave, you have to try and find your way through that wave to the next wave. And by doing this, you have to surf the wave so that you're reaching. You might have to let quite a bit of kicker off to get the boom out far enough so that you can go by the lee. So it might be a bit sketchy. So it's one for practice, really, not for racing. But yeah, you basically zigzag forward and backwards to try and find the gap through the waves.
And that, as you said, that's the one place when you might choose to sail by the lee downwind is when you're kind of keeping yourself on a wave. And actually a really good way to soak down a bit is if you can catch a wave and get going down by the lee, you can often make a lot of ground on VMG.
Yeah, very quickly, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, Veronica's asking if piling the Cunningham, how is that for the kind of longevity of the sail if you're using that much Cunningham? It's all right for you sailmakers, but what about us mere mortals that can't have new sails all the time?
Good question, Veronica. I don't think it should be a problem. I mean, as long as it's like made pretty well and not actually splitting any seams that there are in the sail. It should always really return to where it came from. I mean, as it's not flapping, it's not actually deteriorating. You're just stretching the cloth, and the cloth's like elastic effectively, and it should just return to its normal state. Well, that's kind of what I think anyway. And if you've not got any on and you're flapping, I would say that's going to knacker your sail more than pulling Cunningham on.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, that's something that's just dawned on me. I like that theory. It's basically use the Cunningham, keep the sail.
Stop it from flapping.
You're doing a lot less harm to your sail than having a.
Should have told you that.
There you go.
But no, I don't think it's an issue as long as your sail holds together. And from once you pulled it on, as long as it's still holding on the stitching, I think there's not an issue with longevity and anything. So
cool. Okay, well, I've definitely taken all the questions to the audience. There's one last one, which is also from Veronica, which is, are you planning to come to this year's Nationals?
Yes, I am. Hopefully,
woohoo,
we're all able to run it.
Assuming we're able to.
Yeah.
Good.
There we are.
2nd to the 4th of July, Thornton Herald. There is an extra reason why you need to keep coming to the Nationals, of course. So it's really good news to hear that you're coming, and that is the Streaker Legends table. This is the people who've won the Nationals more than twice. Do you
think my dad's just doing that? Yeah.
So yeah, apparently there's a chap called Alan Gillard who's won the Nationals 10 times and you've only won it 8. So
yeah.
You need to keep coming back.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll keep coming back because it's just such a wonderful boat and great people, great association. So yeah, I'll always be at the Streakers if I can, as long as it doesn't clash with anything and other things. I'll try my best to turn up whenever I can. Yeah.
Which means your dad's record is in jeopardy, I suspect.
Yeah, well, hopefully can find a boat this year. I mean, I think I've got his boat. But
yeah, he's already started asking around. He knows he's not got his boat.
But yeah, hopefully he can do it because it'd be really great to have him on the water again. So yeah, and Staunton Harold's just such a fantastic club as well. Cannot stress how good it is actually. It's such a nice little pond, and yeah, great on the water and off the water. Nice clubhouse, got a nice bar and like grass and everything. It's really lovely. Yeah, really nice part of the world.
Cool. Okay, Tom, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to attempt to stop the share. Sue, can you unmute everyone or invite everyone to unmute, and we'll do a round of applause for Tom. That's been really fantastic. Clap in front of your videos, everyone, because we may not be able to get the audio working. I'm bang on schedule.
Nailed it.
Tom, thank you, Tom. That's been really good. That's really good. I'm going to leave everyone with this picture, which is if they gave out knighthoods for services to streaker sailing, Tom would be our man. Thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. It's
Cheers,
been
Neil.
really
Thanks
good
for organising the stream and everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Tom.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.